Story 1 by Ian. Last year, my roommate and I parted ways after sharing a rental house for 4 years. Both of us had secured better paying jobs, and the house we were in wasn't the ideal choice for either of us. It was just a matter of time before one of us moved out to find a place of our own. After my roommate left, I found myself utilizing more space in the house and decided to extend my stay for another year or two. During this period in early December, our area experienced a series of severe snowstorms. My workplace allowed us to work from home for a few days, given the challenging weather conditions. Seizing the opportunity, I transformed my former roommate's bedroom into an office. One day, while engrossed in work, I heard a knock at the front door. Curious, I left the room and discovered a man in a heavy winter jacket on the porch. He wasn't a worker or delivery person, just an ordinary guy. Opening the door, I was greeted by a gust of snow and wind. The man apologized for interrupting my day and explained that his car was stuck in the snow near my house. Without a phone, he asked to borrow mine. Initially skeptical, I took a moment to observe the situation. Looking out the window, I spotted a small SUV stuck in the snowbank, confirming his story. Convinced he wasn't lying, I grabbed a jacket and put on my shoes. I stood on the porch with him as he used my phone to call his brother. After a brief call, he thanked me and walked away. Satisfied that everything was settled, I returned to my office. Around 7 in the evening, feeling I had accomplished enough for the day, I decided to take the rest of the night off. It was then that I remembered the man in his car. I went to check, only to find the car still there and the man inside. Almost 3 hours had passed, raising questions about why he was still waiting. Perhaps he was waiting for someone to pick him up after work. Uncertain, I made dinner and watched TV before heading upstairs to shower and get ready for bed around 9:30. As I showered, there was a sudden and intense banging on the front door, causing me to jump in fear. The noise shook the walls and I could hear someone aggressively shaking the door handle. Hastily dressing, I left my room, and as I walked down the upstairs hallway, the banging ceased. The entire house fell silent, and I hesitated before slowly descending the stairs. Approaching the front door, I found nobody there. Alarmed, I looked out the window and the car was still parked, but the man was nowhere to be seen. Perplexed and unnerved, I called the police. Upon their arrival, they noticed multiple sets of shoe prints in the snow, obscured by the storm. They recorded the license plate of the car, and from the owner's picture, it appeared to be the same man I had assisted earlier. Despite waiting, the man never returned. The incident left me disturbed, contemplating the potential dangers right outside my door. Was it the same man desperately seeking help, or was there a more sinister motive involved? The questions about that mysterious night, the man's whereabouts, and the reason for his distress remain unanswered, forming a long list of uncertainties unlikely to be resolved. Story 2 by Josiah G. In the chilly month of January, I had orchestrated a getaway to rent a quaint winter cabin nestled near an ice fishing lake. This particular cabin was a humble and uncomplicated abode, tailored for individuals like myself who relish the serene joys of fishing, whether it be on the unfrozen lake or during the tranquil moments of ice fishing. While I typically brought along a companion for such excursions, this time I had mapped out a 3-day retreat with no particular agenda, save for the simple pleasures of lakeside contemplation and angling. Upon my arrival, I meticulously arranged my belongings within the cabin, transforming it into my temporary sanctuary. I took delight in brewing a steaming cup of coffee, immersing myself in the warmth near the crackling fireplace for a leisurely afternoon. As the cabin was a single-room haven, its confines held the bed, fireplace, and all other essentials in a harmonious coexistence. Fatigued from the day's journey, I succumbed to early slumber and awoke at the break of 7 a.m., eager to embark on a lakeside adventure, merely a brisk 10-minute stroll through a snow-laden forested path from my abode. Arriving at the lake, I carefully selected a prime spot, arranged my fishing gear, drilled through the icy surface, and began my angling pursuit. Personally, I found the rhythmic act of fishing to be incredibly cathartic, although I acknowledge that some might deem it monotonous. After spending several contemplative hours on the lake, I gathered my belongings as the snowfall intensified and the wind picked up its fervor. Making my way back to the cabin, my tranquility was disrupted by the sight of a set of footprints in the snow, mirroring my own from earlier in the day. Intriguingly, they led right up to the lake's edge, executed a curious about-face, and retraced their steps down the path toward the cabin. A sense of unease crept in, prompting me to entertain the possibility of someone shadowing my footsteps. Deciding to investigate, I followed the enigmatic footprints, initially aligned with the path but diverging into the mysterious depths of the woods rather than leading back to the cabin. Perplexed and slightly on edge, I returned to the cabin to bask in the warmth of the fireplace. Surrounded by miles of uninhabited wilderness, the presence of an unknown individual in the winter woods added an eerie layer to my solitude. As night fell, I prepared and consumed my evening meal within the cabin's confines, maintaining the comforting glow of the fireplace while engrossed in a good read. Approximately an hour after sunset, an unexpected disturbance interrupted the stillness. A faint crunching of snow, resembling footsteps. Hastening to the window, I glimpsed a mysterious figure by the trees, shrouded in thick clothing that concealed their features. As the figure advanced toward the cabin, I instinctively ducked down, attentive to the rhythmic approach, until it reached the cabin's exterior wall. To my disconcertment, the figure moved to the window, casting a shadow that suggested a curious peering inside. Suddenly, our eyes met, prompting me to recoil. Attempting to open the window, the mysterious individual quickly retreated and vanished into the snowy woods from whence they came. Shaken by this unsettling encounter, I swiftly packed my belongings and retreated to my car, leaving the vicinity mere minutes later. The identity and intentions of this enigmatic figure remained elusive, yet their knowledge of my presence at the lake, coupled with the nocturnal attempt to breach the cabin's sanctuary, left an enduring sense of danger. Thankfully unscathed, I couldn't help but reflect on how that particular night teetered on the precipice of a potentially grave situation. Story 3, by FM. This incident occurred back in January 2020 when I was 18 during winter break. Eager for something to do and enticed by the prospect of earning a few $100 a week, I signed up for DoorDash, following in the footsteps of some friends who were also partaking in it. While I wasn't in dire need of money, being a high school student living with my parents, the extra cash was a welcomed perk. The initial nights of delivering food went smoothly, and after getting the hang of it during the first few orders, the routine became somewhat predictable. As I entered my second week, a growing enthusiasm for making money led me to extend my working hours. Inspired by my friends who had mentioned that deliveries on days with inclement weather often yielded more earnings, I decided to venture out on a snowy night. During the first hour, I was FaceTiming with a friend, both of us driving around. However, he called it a night and headed home around 8. Given that it was a Saturday, I had the flexibility to stay out as late as I desired. By 10, boredom began to set in, prompting me to accept one more order. Armed with the bag, I drove to the neighborhood, a street adorned with average houses, now obscured by the blanket of snow. Navigating through the snow-covered landscape proved challenging, both in terms of driving and identifying house numbers. Eventually, I reached the designated address, discovering a 2-story suburban home with lingering Christmas lights on the trees. I parked, turned on my hazards, and approached the house, only to find the front door slightly ajar. Despite the snowfall and cold, I assumed it was for my convenience, allowing me to leave the bag inside. As I pushed the door open a bit more and slid the bag inside, a woman's voice echoed from across the house. She inquired if I was the delivery person for her order, sounding like a young woman in her early 20s. Surprised by the unexpected conversation, I confirmed the delivery, explaining that I left the bag in her doorway. To my astonishment, she promptly suggested I push the door open and bring the bag to her. A sense of unease crept in, as it was peculiar to be invited inside. Despite my hesitations, I pushed the door open and saw a long hallway leading to what seemed like the kitchen. On the wall, I noticed the clear shadow of the woman, presumably standing around the corner. When I asked where she wanted the delivery, There was a prolonged silence. As she leaned around the corner and gestured for me to come in, I realized the shadow on the wall hadn't moved with her. Someone else was standing there. For a moment, my blood ran cold. Swiftly, I placed the bag down, took a few steps back, and turned to leave. Rushing away from the house, I stumbled into my car and glanced back, only to see the figure of a large man approaching in the front window as I sped away. Seeking refuge at a nearby gas station, I took a moment to catch my breath and process the harrowing experience. The unsettling realization struck that this was potentially a setup. Despite reporting the incident to the police, they were unable to take further action. The woman at the house denied the presence of anyone else and refused the officers access to search for potential accomplices. The intentions of the woman and the man remain unknown, but the incident left me grappling with the chilling realization that entering their house without a second thought could have had dire consequences.